Okay, hello and welcome to my Disc Priest guide. This is a Atal'Dazar guide for Disc Priests. It is meant to be kind of like a general guide that has some broader applications just for the dungeon in general that any healer could use. But it is, of course, focused on Disc Priests. I am a Disc Priest, so I'm going to be talking about cooldowns and abilities that are specific to Disc Priests to help people who are new to Disc Priest or who have been playing Disc Priest for a while and want to get some extra tips and helps to help them start timing keys closer to the 15-ish range. This is an 18, so things will hit a little bit harder than you would typically see in a 15, but a lot of the principles are the same. And if your group is a little bit less geared than our group is, it will feel more like an 18 when you're running a 15. So a lot of this will translate really well, hopefully, to whatever key level you're running. And of course, for this guide, I am not trying to tell you that this is the one right way to run this dungeon. I'm sharing with you how I like to do it, but really any way that works for you and your group is the right way to do it for you. So in this key, I took Crucible of Flame to help with some of the trash packs that have adds of higher health. It is a bolstering week this week, and I also took Twist of Fate because our group, I wanted us to be a little bit safer on some of these trash pulls, where Schism is a little bit harder to use. But on a more tyrannical week, I would probably have taken Schism to help with the gold boss or the Gilded Claws boss. So I also ended up taking a haste trinket. I probably would have taken the Psyche Shredder over the haste trinket if I had known. And then I used a mana trinket to help with priority target DPS. So we started out with Razan. The only really significant damage on this boss is the tank bleed. So here I use pain suppression a little later. I see that the tank already had a cooldown up, so I waited for that to go off before I pain suppressed him, but it was a little bit late. I also didn't hug the wall close enough, so I got feared. Don't get feared like I did. Also, you can sort of bait pursuit here. That's why I'm running a little bit further out. I'm trying to get him to pursue me instead of the melee DPS so that our group's damage would be a little bit higher. I just kind of stay hanging out there trying to get him to put pursuit on me, but he never did in this run. So you can see the tank bleed going out again. The tank has a cooldown up for it. He seems to be fine. Parts of your group, like some of your group members, may end up out of line of sight. That's just how it goes. Some people run to one side, some people run to the other. I like to stay on this far side so that if I do get pursuit, I can just quickly run to this one and we can do the exact same positioning strategy on both of these pillars because they're identical. And he falls over pretty fast because it is fortified. This week was fortified, skittish, and bolstering. We ended up we snapped the swords once. So I staggered cooldowns throughout to help with the sword damage. They do kind of hurt quite a bit on any fortified week, but the snapping isn't really necessary for us, just because I could heal through it pretty okay. It is a lot of burst damage, so you do have to kind of be aware that is coming and keep people as healthy as you can so that they can survive the next hits of the burst damage. And it helps a lot if people were using personals, which I'm pretty sure they did here. And on these sword packs that have the Sky Screamer, you see me kind of trying to funnel as much damage into the Sky Screamer. That's just because it is bolstering. We did end up with one build-a-boss Sky Screamer in here, or the Sky Screamer, it was just really high when the trash fell over. which isn't really what you want on a bolstering week, but it didn't kill us. The Sky Screamer doesn't really hurt that much. It just takes a lot longer to die when it has a lot more health from the bolstering. So this pack up here can be kind of dangerous. The Juggernaut casts Merciless Assault, and on a random ranged player, there is a snap spot, and it's kind of back here on the stair. So I couldn't really go there without pulling the other pack, so I just healed through it, and it wasn't really that bad. It could get really bad if he enrages, or like if whoever is getting targeted by it ends up low from some other effects. It could end up killing them. But we didn't have that happen here. It was a pretty smooth run overall. Crippling pestilence, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but crippling, whatever, is dispellable by priests. It gives you kind of a slow, so at least when these little tiny adds are out, getting that slow can make someone have a much harder time dodging their explosion circles. It did happen to me once here, so it's good to dispel that pretty quickly. And then I'm also using an add-on to show who's getting targeted by what. And I have that linked in the chat below. It helped me put a bubble on whoever was about to get targeted, or make sure they're topped. And here I ended up just kind of like reactively healing it and dispelling it because we were doing pretty good at missing kicks. But in a team where like all these kicks are going through, I would have probably made sure to bubble every single player before that goes out, so they get the 3% damage reduction, and so that the bubble can kind of heal them some before the cast finishes. This trash pack is pretty easy. Usually there is a Juggernaut in here, I think. And we're getting the enraged dispels here, which is nice. We ended up pulling the other priests later, and I used Fade to drop aggro back onto the tank, and because the pull was later and not really done by the tank, like the aggro was kind of a little all over the place, and I used Rapture to help with that. It might be better to save it for the next pack if you can, because that one just hurts a little bit more, but it's not really a big deal when you use it. So this Juggernaut's starting to get kind of bolstered. You can see he's starting to hurt a little bit more. I'll show you guys where the snap spot is on that. You do need the tank to position specifically so that you can keep everyone in range as a healer if you're going to stand there. But it's right by the stairs, between these kind of tiki torches and the stairs. You kind of hug the wall, the little ledge there, and go as far back as you can right next to the tiki torches without actually falling down the stairs. There's a really tiny lip along there. But you do need to, for sure, have the tank pull a little bit closer to the stairs, otherwise you'll be more than 40 yards away from some players. And that's really bad here because there is some damage. So here we had some really bolstered guys hitting our tank pretty hard. I didn't expect how hard it would hit. He went from pretty much full to pretty much dead. I could have pain suppressed them, but I didn't expect it to hit that hard right then. So I didn't use it. So this is the boss that I was thinking. Schism is pretty good on. There's specific windows of burst AoE damage, and having a 30% buff to deal with it, to your damage and healing, is a lot better than having a 20% buff to deal with it later on in the fight. So I kind of kind of wish that I had, like, if it was tyrannical, I would have gone for schism for sure, and I'm not actually sure which is better on fortified weeks. I would think it would depend on your group and what's most likely to kill you. So here, when she yells, Atal'Dazar's power flows through me, or Atal'Dazar, however you want to say it. She puts a buff on herself that is dispellable by priests, also by demon hunters. There's the Gilded Claws. So I was trying to dispel those as soon as I could so that the tank didn't take any hits while that was super buffed. You kind of see me going in and taking the bloods a little bit early. That's so that people don't steal it from me. I don't want to be running across the room when this AoE burst damage goes out. And you see on that one, I popped Rapture at about 2 seconds before transfusion, or a little bit more. And that's so that I could have enough time to start getting bubbles out before this happened. Priest can also boop that mask further away. You just kind of have to stand by the blood that it's likely to run to first, because your boop is only melee range, so you'll have to wait for it to get pretty close to you before you boop. So here it's really common for at least one person to stand in range of the fire. So if you keep an eye on the spawn location and you survive, and your tank survives, it's likely to not really be a wipe here, but you know, it can be. You need enough kicks to survive for the damage to be manageable and the fight, and enough DPS for the fight to be over before you and run out of cooldowns if you're missing kicks. But no deaths here, so that was nice. Very good for us. Very fortunate that no one died there. So this is the first and only saurd pack that we snapped. I had the cooldowns to manage it, so and I didn't want the tank to fall off if we were doing the snaps on the tikis like a lot of people do. So I felt like, since we hadn't really done a lot of snaps, we didn't really need to, and it was safer not to. If we wanted to time the key. But you do see people get pretty low. This is where Twist of Fate came in really helpful. I think it's the only reason I had the healing throughput to not need to snap on a fortified week on an 18. On this pack we had kind of a late pull of the Sky Screamer, so we kind of did a little bit of a build-a-boss here with bolstering, but we got through it. He was still he had a lot of health when the swords just fell over. Yeah. So tunneling as much damage as possible into the big birds really helps a lot on bolstering weeks, but with this late pull, we couldn't really, or we didn't. I kind of staggered cooldowns out, like 1 per saurd pack since we weren't snapping, and that seemed to work pretty well. I've always kind of ended up in trouble if I had to do 2 per saurd pack, because you end up getting them back to back and then you have nothing up for the second one. But with this pathing, it was really nice for me to be able to use at least 1 cooldown without running out before I would need them again. So here, the honor guards can be shackle undead, are undead, so you can use shackle undead to control them, or to see them. But we ended up we didn't do that. There was one pack where we might have, the pack that has 2 of them right by the obelisk. On the first pack, I didn't use any cooldown because we were about to do another saurd pack right there, and that would have a lot of other damage from the other trash. So I saved my rapture for that one. But for this, because we were playing the obelisk, not on the final boss, so we had to kill the 2 reanimated guards and the 1 witch doctor. So if you are playing that, I really like to use rapture on this pack here by this obelisk. It usually comes up again right before the next pack at the next obelisk. So this one, like rapture being 1.5 minutes, times up pretty conveniently with that. And then I had also, I think I saved barrier. I'm not sure. I guess we'll see. But here I start funneling as much damage as possible into the witch doctor because I really wanted the witch doctor to be dead before the totem goes down. She dies shortly after, and we don't get any casts. But with the Venom Blast cast, if you get that going out when people are already probably going to be low from this green going out on everyone, it's probably going to kill whoever gets hit when they're low. And there's not really any way to keep people from being somewhat low here. Especially if they're sometimes standing in it. Yeah. So I did save barrier. Yeah, I'd really... That one pack is the source of most wipes here. At least for trash wipes. That pack and the other pack that's coming up that's at the bottom of the stairs by this boss. Like, not the pack by the gate that you can skip with the obelisk, but the pack that's at the bottom of the stairs where you get 2 witch doctors. So 2 venom blasts, and if you get 2 venom blasts on one person, there's really nothing you can do to heal through it. So this obelisk has the fear guys. I like to fear the 1st and the 4th fear, or mass dispel, sorry, the 1st and the 4th fear. But on bursting weeks, I save mass dispel for either the 2nd or the 3rd, so that I'm using it right as the adds die, so that people don't end up feared when the bursting damage comes out. That way they can use a potion if they need to. And then when you're doing all the rest, you have to kind of prioritize who to dispel. I'll usually prioritize myself for the tank, but warrior tanks and death knight tanks can immune it with either anti-magic shell or whatever the warrior ability is that immunes you to a fear. But having the tank back, tank this guy take his melees while facing away is pretty dangerous sometimes. So here I'm manning up. I thought about getting Sugarfish Feast for the guy just so that people could kind of see how quickly your mana restores, but they were marked up substantially on my server. I think someone's trying to game the auction house with those Sugarfish Feasts, so I ended up not using them. And I think I forgot to mention that on that obelisk, you kind of have to watch the tank stacks from the adds, and I ended up using pain suppression a little bit too early, and then barriering the end because we got to really high stacks on our tank. And so I didn't have barrier for this, and then I also fat-fingered rapture at the end of that. So I didn't have rapture either, and yeah, then I didn't expect them to be tanking it that direction. I usually see people come out into the green, so I also didn't position well for our pathing on that, and we wiped. So yeah, this is if you can't do both for whatever reason, you can always shackle undead 1, but I did think we could do both if I had all of my cooldowns up. And if people, I think often people conserve DPS cooldowns there if they're not aware of how much that hurts, or sometimes they don't know that you can stun those adds to get the rending maul or whatever cast so that it doesn't put a debuff on your tank, a stacking debuff on your tank. So if any one of those things go wrong, there's not a ton that you can do. You can shackle them to kind of kick the cast, but you probably don't want to use a global for it. as it's very healing intensive, as you guys just saw. Alright, so here is our pull where we have Rapture. I do Rapture pretty early. And just bubble whoever's low, whoever's taking the most damage. And you can see that our tank is getting some higher stacks. I end up having Pain Suppression up again, so I can Pain Suppress the tank too. And then go straight into Barrier. I see the direction he's kiting and kind of drop that right before, like leading to where they're going to go. That way they could stay in it a little bit longer. And also on this pack specifically, if you really don't think that you're going to be able to shackle one and still time it, you can take ERT and use that as like a kind of an additional cooldown to kind of keep your group a little bit healthier and a little bit safer. I've had to do that before sometimes for this dungeon, depending on the affixes. And raging is also really bad with those guys. So this strategy is a pretty nice one. I hadn't really done it before this key with this group. Maybe once I had, but I do really like it. It keeps people from, like, very often the tank has to go ahead and ends up out of range. And then your group ends up having to run through a lot of purple, which is also pretty bad, depending on like the keystone level and how hard it's hitting. And if they're doing that when there's also casts going out that are going to drop them lower anyway. But other than that, you don't really need a ton of cooldowns for this boss, I don't think. Sometimes I'll pop a battle potion just because with 5 things to dot, it feels like a good, like an efficient use of a battle potion of Fury. Just to get extra procs on extra things, extra trash. So with this boss that we're about to go into, with this boss, Disc Priest can actually dispel the dot, dispel the dot that the boss puts on all your party. So I like to dot all 3 totems, pick whichever one's the highest and focus damage into that, and then I'll dispel the dot on whoever's getting the lowest, or myself. Disc Priest can feel a little bit squishy, being like a cloth-wearing class. And so if no one else is clearly in need of a dispel, like because they procced corruptions or whatever, I'll just dispel myself. So Rapture comes up again right about here. I hold it until the totems go down. And that's because pretty often people sometimes will end up standing in bad as they're getting used to like figuring out where to position and remembering how this mechanic works. So here you can see some of our party members got kind of low, but with Rapture it was really easy to top them back up. And again, the dot goes out and you can dispel it on whoever's low, or yourself, or in this case I didn't even bother using a global for it because people were not really taking very much damage from it. I just wanted to do more DPS. So we skipped this trash pack outside of this gate. Most groups will. It's really easy to, especially as they're ranged, accidentally stand too close to those guys and pull them through the gate onto the boss, and that's not very good. You're gonna wipe on the boss probably when the boss is lower. I've done that before, so just try not to. I mean, it happens, but it's a good thing to try to remember during the fight, is that you can pull those through the gate. So here I start to sit on cooldowns again, not for these 2, but for the pack right below the gate that has 2 Witch Doctors. With those, you're a little bit at the mercy of your group's kicked, because on a higher fortified key, like getting too many on, if they happen to focus the same player pretty quickly, then there's just not a lot that any healer can do to heal through it. It pretty much just needs kicked at some point. So you can see me targeting one of the witch doctors, and then I use my trinket, I use my shadow fiend, I use everything that I have to try to help DPS the witch doctors down. And then I'm also using my addon that lets me know who the unstable hex is going on, and I'm trying to bubble them before their cast finishes in the event that it's not kicked. So that gives people an extra 3% damage reduction when the cast hits. It gives you like them a little bit of extra health so that they're not going to get as low. You're healing it a little bit before it ends up hitting, like the damage hits. So it's a really, really helpful add-on. It's also in the comments. And it's very nice to have in case if your group is going to miss a kick or two. And a lot of groups will miss, a kick or two. So here I don't have a lot to deal with the sword pack, so it ends up being like a little bit scarier, but also in some ways we got kind of lucky in that there wasn't a lot of instances where multiple swords leapt on the same person, which just generally makes it a lot easier to heal. And if your group is calling kicks, you can fear the sword or knock the sword. You can also knock this trash, but since we weren't calling kicks, you don't really see me doing it here because I really didn't want to fear on top of someone's kick, because fear just resets the cast and buys you a little bit more time. And so if they kick into a cast that was already feared, they waste their kick and it doesn't interrupt the cast. So it's something that's nice to do, but you should do it carefully. The knock also has a slow component, so if the group was getting really, really low from all the swords, I could knock the swords away from like one person, myself or another player, and then buy us a little bit more time for me to catch up on healing. But we didn't need that, so I didn't do that. If you all enter the same time, like pretty early, you can use this time as the growths are growing to get ahead. But if you end up going in a little bit later, pretty often that Dark Fury cast will happen in the growths, so you'll want to make sure you're far enough away at all times in the event that you cast that, so that you don't end up slowed and unable to dodge it, and then just essentially die to the cast because you can't get out. So with this next boss that we're going into, I like to stay on melee as much as I can. The spiders will tend to they chase players and kind of move around where you're baiting them, basically. So by having range stand in melee, you're encouraging the spiders to group up, which gives you just a lot more space to work with that is safe. It just makes it a lot easier to dodge. You could have any number of spiders, and if they're in a tightly grouped pack that you're staying ahead of, all of you, then they're just generally quite a bit easier to avoid than if they're everywhere and there is no safe place to stand because they're everywhere and moving kind of randomly. So on the first soul rend, I didn't use any cooldown because that one's a little bit easier for me. The spiders haven't spawned. I'm not going to be dropping casts to move. They die very quickly. And then I start staggering in my other cooldowns for the future ones. In general, as you're running away, like towards wherever your group is stacking, you can use like shields on everyone, like just popping a big bubble on everyone. I ended up being really late on one of these, and it ended up being a much scarier soul run than it needed to be. I think it's the next one actually that we're gonna get. I stood in a spider. It would have killed me if it was tyrannical. Don't be me. And in general, like, I don't think it helped us at all that I cleared one either, because now for the rest of this fight, which is fortunately very short because it wasn't tyrannical, and we had really good boss damage. But like now, those are going to stay for the rest of the fight. Yeah, this is the one where I barriered instead of bubbling. Like I didn't bubble because I was trying to figure out where to drop barrier. And I should have just bubbled while figuring out where to drop barrier. But yeah, people got a lot lower there. I think someone also did stand in purple, but it was just a lot scarier. And I wish that I had bubbled before it went out. It would have made it a lot better. But yeah, we timed it, and hopefully you guys all learned a little bit more about like Disc Priest and this dungeon. And if you liked this video, please give it a like, and you can also follow me on Twitch and Twitter, or subscribe on YouTube if you want to see the rest of these video guides. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and have a good day.